Thank you for staying with us. The world news at 12 begins on the foreign scene, where President Donald Trump has said he's not joking about seeking a third term in office, a move prohibited by the U.S. Constitution's 22nd Amendment. In an interview on Sunday, Trump said there was a method to achieve it. Asked if he wanted another term as president, Trump said, "I like working." A third term for Trump would violate the U.S. 22nd Amendment, a clause in the American Constitution that says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. A few days after Trump made the historic return to the White House for a second term, and the August House of Reps of Tennessee proposed an amendment to the Constitution that will see Trump eligible for a third term. In a recent development back home in Nigeria, Edison, Ehie, the chief of staff to suspended Rivers State Governor Fubara, has alleged that he was offered 5 billion management of his principal. Speaking on the television program yesterday, Ehie claimed he has evidence of the bribe offer stored on his phone. He said the offer was made while he was serving as the majority leader of the Rivers State House of Assembly. The chief of staff also denied claims that he orchestrated the October 30, 2023 bombing of the Rivers Assembly complex on Fubara's orders. The allegation was made by former head of service in the state, George Nweke, during a press conference last Friday. He insisted that Amewule should be questioned regarding the explosion that affected the legislative chambers. He also revealed that 10 witnesses, including senior police officers, testified before a federal high court in Abuja, confirming that they saw the speaker Amewule's convoy, hence the reason for allowing him access to the assembly complex on the night of October 29, 2023, the day of the explosion. You will recall that former Rivers State head of civil service, George Nweke, has alleged that Governor Fubara was responsible for the explosion, with Ehie acting as an accomplice. Let's take a listen to Edison Ehie speaking on these issues.
George Nweke, the former head of service, had no political nor intimate relationship with us, be the governor of Rivers State, elected by Rivers people. That's Nala Fubara, nor myself. You know that George Nweke was a civil servant, and his responsibilities are clearly applying. As head of service, the closest he gets to the governor is at the executive council meeting. And if he has something that he wants to relate to the governor, which, quote and unquote, relates to civil servants, he needs to seek appointment with the governor and be cleared by the DSS in charge of security in government house. Judge Nweke and myself, nor the governor, had never had any meeting jointly or several at all, not talk of something as far-reaching as political discussion. Not a politician. He does not, you heard from his local government, Moma local government area, he does not even partake in critical local government political discussions. They just needed somebody who has a little level of hierarchy in government circle to score cheap and not join issues completely with Mr. George Nweke, because I've already instructed my lawyers to file issues of criminal libel against George Nweke, and I hope he's very prepared to come and substantiate this claim and these allegations, if it were. But just to buttress a little light, you know, because we're in the process of making peace, and Mr. President has already intervened, the father of the nation, who we respect very much. And mind you, this interview, I'm not holding brief from my principal, the governor of Rivers, elected by Rivers people. But it's very important to clarify that I was not, I had no hand, that was a part of the burning down of the Rivers State House of Assembly. You know, everything I mentioned, I show you evidence. I would have also opened my phone to show you the beginning of October 2023, where they had approached me with a bribe of 5 billion naira. It's here on my phone. It's here. My WhatsApp, I'll open it to show you. And that money was to be passed to me through Honorable. But I'll leave that for now.
In a recent development, the Social Democratic Party SDP presidential candidate in the 2023 general elections, Adewale Adebayo, has expressed his willingness to step down his presidential ambition in the 2027 elections for a better politician to emerge as the flag bearer of his party. Adebayo made the statement on a Sunday television program. According to him, the SDP would give Nigerians a candidate that all citizens will be proud of and be ready to give a chance to unseat President Bola Tinubu of the APC in the next presidential election. He further stated that the SDP will not divide Nigerians along the delicate lines of religion and ethnicity. Already, El-Rufai and some of his foot soldiers have joined the SDP. There have been talks about Atiku and Obi reportedly making moves to join the SDP, but both politicians have not made such a decision known officially. The political crisis within the Lagos State House of Assembly remains unsolved as Speaker Mudashiru Obasa continues to push forward with his lawsuit against former Speaker Mojisola Miranda and other lawmakers despite President Bola Tinubu's intervention. According to sources familiar with the matter, confusion and concern are growing among APC leaders in Lagos over Obasa's refusal to withdraw the legal case. The source further noted that Miranda has already stepped aside in line with the party's resolution, making Obasa's persistence puzzling. The Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria, N5bn in Benue State, has expressed serious concerns regarding the reported poisoning and theft of cattle belonging to its members by criminal groups in the Agatu local government area. Chairman of N5bn in the state, Risku Mohammed, raised the issue over the weekend, revealing that more than 20 cows owned by Fulani herdsmen were poisoned on Saturday in Ucha village, Agatu. He further alleged that in addition to the poisoned cattle, over 200 cows were stolen last Thursday by criminals. The situation was somewhat mitigated by the swift action of security forces who managed to apprehend one of the thieves, although others managed to flee. Mohammed accused the farmer from the Ucha community, whose name has not been disclosed, of poisoning the cows using rice chaff after inviting a herder to feed his cattle with it. This act, according to him, resulted in the death of 13 cows, while 7 others that survived are currently receiving treatment. You're currently listening to the World News at 12 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. We'll now head into the news analysis segment. I have veteran journalist, political, social, national and international affairs analyst, Mr. Chukuma Okoro. It's always a pleasure whenever we get to have you here. Welcome to the World News at 12.
Thanks, Joma. Good afternoon for having me.
Thank you for coming.
All right.
Right. So we do have a lot to talk about, so let's quickly get right into it. There have been accusations and counter-accusations as to who was responsible for the Rivers Assembly complex bombing, which arguably escalated the already brewing crisis in the state. The governor has denied involvement, but is it possible that a state governor could actually mastermind the bombing of the legislative complex to prevent his impeachment?
Well, it's a bombing of the legislative complex or the pulling down of the complex.
You know, there was an explosion at the complex, right? And Judge Nweke...
There was an explosion at the Hotel Presidential.
Okay.
There was an explosion at the Hotel Presidential, which Nweke and co. later said that Fubara was the mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware that there was an explosion at the House of Assembly complex. There might have been, but I can't recall on top of my head. What I understand clearly is that the House of Assembly complex was pulled down by the governor, and he said, look, that part of the building was collapsing, now he needed to rebuild it. And that was at the point that they were making moves, to impeach him. But bringing down the House of Assembly complex would not stop his impeachment, because the only thing that they required was the mess, which is the authority of, the symbol of authority of the legislature. So if they take it away, they could sit in somebody's bedroom, conduct a plenary with a quorum just by the mess, sitting have it in the mess in front of them. They could just impeach the governor. But is it that simple? We have gone beyond the era where you just simply put together like 7 or 8 legislators and impeach a governor. How will you do that? Have you informed him of infractions he made, impeachable offense? The Chief Justice of the state has to set up a commission to investigate and report back to the House. These are the procedures, and you just can't jump them. You have to follow the process. So I'm taken aback when someone says that, look, that the governor pulled down the assembly complex, or that there was a bomb explosion simply because he didn't want to be impeached. Where was the real impeached? Where was Alamiese impeached?
But here's the thing: if indeed the governor is not guilty, are there any indications to show that there were serious investigations carried out to determine the culprits?
Exactly the point. Exactly the point. That is a question mark on our intelligence. I mean, Choma, you and I shouldn't be having this discussion if we had intelligence. Intelligence will simply tell you the person that did it.
Here's the thing: Edison Ehie, who was the former majority leader of the House, who's now chief of staff to Governor Fubara, is saying that the only person who gained access to the assembly complex after the sittings of that day is the now speaker, Martin Ameule, right? And that the reason why they opened the gate for him was because, of course, they recognize him as the speaker, and he's the only one, not any other legislator. He's the only one as speaker who actually has the right to go into the assembly complex after sittings have happened. So who exactly is lying here? He's also saying that witnesses attested to that fact, that yes, we opened the gate for the speaker, and maybe shortly after he left, the explosion happened. Okay.
Now, it also has to do with, it has a nexus with the intelligence that we are talking about. If Edison here is making this allegation, the itinerary of the speaker, as at that point, should be able to show where he was at that particular point in time.
And did he go into the part of the building that actually went down during that explosion? Because like you rightly pointed out, it was after the explosion that Governor Fubara said, okay, let's pull this place down and build it back up. During the speech where President Tinubu declared a state of emergency, one could say he more or less blamed Governor Fubara for certain actions, for not building the assembly back up and all of that. But from the images we've been seeing online, that assembly seems close to completion.
Okay, Choma, the point of it is this. I keep talking about the assembly complex. Do you need to impeach a governor? Must it be on that large edifice called the House of Assembly complex? And don't we have CCTV cameras? They should be able to do a replay and see who entered. What happened after the person entered and after the person left? All these things border on intelligence, border on security. So why are we holding this discussion? If we had all of that, we wouldn't be. So it's a question mark on Nigeria's intelligence agencies. Even at that state level, at the state level, they should be able to provide all of these things. You should have a CCTV camera. When you and I walk here, we can play back and see what happened 3 months, 4 months, 5 months ago. Because we have the archive is there. So why shouldn't the House of Assembly have it? You get my drift. So these are questions.
And even Governor Fubara should have demanded it to really know the culprits behind the bombing as at that time.
As at that time, they should provide it to him. The state director of SSA should even have that information. Intelligence, I mean, it does, because we spend all of our money giving them, every month, every year they have budgetary allocations for what? For intelligence. So what do they do with it?
Like I said,
don't they have CCTV cameras in the House of Assembly complex? Shouldn't they? If they don't.
Mr. Okoro, like I said, accusations and counter-accusations have been flying. Judge Weke is alleging that he witnessed where a bag of money was being handed over to Edison Ehie at the government house to execute the operation, although he admitted that he did not know the amount inside. And he also said that he has proof to show that what he's saying is true. Edison Ehie then showed his own, and they said he has on his own phone a proof where he was approached to be given 5 billion naira bribe when he was a majority leader of the River State House of Assembly to impeach his principal, Governor Fubara.
You see, the thing is this. Now, somebody says, I saw bags of money, but I don't know how much. And another person said, I was given 5 billion naira and I have evidence.
No, I was offered. He didn't say he took it.
I was offered.
He said he was offered through someone. Evidence. The only problem is he's not letting us know who offered the money, why they offered the money, what the money was supposed to be for.
When I use the word give, Choma, I can give you something and you reject it.
Say offer so that the people hearing will know that I did not take it.
Exactly the point. What I'm saying is that give and offer, they are the same thing, especially when you accept or you don't accept. So in this case, he was given and he rejected. But he says he has evidence. At least there's a specificity to it. 5 billion naira. Now, this other person says, look, I saw bags of money, but I don't know how much. But I know what it is meant for. So you begin to see question marks. So in everything that is happening in River State, you see that the political shenanigans are very obvious. This person's word against this other person's word, more like an afterthought. And somebody like George Nweke, why is it squealing now? Why is it spilling?
Because you heard Edison here say that he's just the head of civil service. He has no business with politics in the state. And not even in his own local government. He doesn't engage in politics.
Back to the issue of the itinerary of public officers, somebody like a governor, somebody like a speaker. In Senate clients, you could go back in 20 years' time. In the United States of America, there's something they call the PDB, the Presidential Daily Briefing. This is when the National Security Advisor briefs the president on everything that has happened. It's a daily thing. So that record, that chart, is always there. You can trace it back to like 20, 30 years ago. Beyond that, the personal secretary of the president, the personal secretary of the governor, has details of his itinerary. You could go back in time and see what George Bush one did between the time he went into office and the time he left office on every day. So those records are there. If we have those records, so why do we have personal secretaries? Why do we have retinue of secretaries? And they are unable to, when Bill Clinton was Barack Obama was writing his memoir, The Promised Land, he had to go back to the archives and did what? And had to dig out. He dug out correspondences of his daily activities put together by his secretary, his personal secretary.
In order to recall certain things. In order to recall.
So if we have such things here, why are we not able to see like...
So we seem to be lacking on both the historical and security fronts.
And intelligence. So we should be able to say, okay, on so and so day, George Nweke met with the governor. And in that meeting, we had Edison, Edison. And we had some people that also, you name those people, that came in. What did they come in with? You have all of these things available. So it's still a question of intelligence security, which speaks to the life that we live here in Nigeria. Every day, nobody is safe here.
After making that broadcast on Friday, you could see where George Nweke's wife came out to say that she doesn't know what's happening with her husband. She's not been able to share any correspondence with him. Also, a behind-the-scene video emerged where certain people were like, from his body language and from the voices in the background, you could see that there was somebody telling him what to say. If indeed that's the case and he's being used, does he not know that he could receive certain cases, criminal charges against him if he's allowing himself to be used by unknown faces, by unknown people? Are there really hands at the background pushing him to do something that is wrong against Governor Fubara, and why?
If you examine everything that is going on, you'll understand that it is Nweke that is speaking, but there are people behind him that are making him speak. It is very clear. Because I would find it difficult to believe that Nweke left Rivers State to Abuja on his own violation without telling his wife where he was going to. Because as at the point the wife was crying, he was already in Abuja, in Nikon Noga, right? He was already there. As I speak with you here, with all sense of modesty, my wife knows where I am at this moment. My wife knows I'm doing this radio analysis with you, 12 o'clock every Monday morning. And I wouldn't have, there's no way I'll leave Lagos without my wife knowing where I'm going to. Especially if I have become a person of interest in the politics of my state. Because Nweke has become a person of interest in the politics of Rivers State.
And he also said he resigned voluntarily. Edison Ehie is saying on that same day he resigned, he reached out to Governor Fubara to actually give him some amount of money, saying now that he has resigned from the service, since they've not been paid for months, he doesn't know what to do. And Edison Ehie was asked that, did Governor Fubara give him that money? He said he did not know, but he doesn't think that Governor Fubara gave him that money, and that Nweke is greedy and he's following the people who will give him the money that he wants.
And when he says that he hasn't been paid for months, for how long? Was Fubara owing salaries? I'm not aware. Maybe he was, but I'm not aware. Was he owing salaries?
But you know that Rivers allocation was withheld.
How much? You know how much Rivers generates every month as IGR? More than the budgets of some states. So I'm not sure. I've not heard. This is the first time I'm hearing that salaries were being owed.
But why would he be asking the governor for money on the same day he resigned?
You see the point of it. I'm saying that this is an afterthought, more like a haste word against Nweke. So which one do we believe now? It also speaks to the shenanigan, the political shenanigan that is happening, the charade that is happening in Rivers State, which is not helping anybody. And the earlier they put the acts together to rescue Rivers State, the better for them. Let me say again, with all sense of modesty, if you see everything that is happening in Rivers State, maybe not detail for detail, I chronicled everything that will happen and the way it is happening in my book, The Future of Politics. I said that much. Look at Bayelsa has been drawn into it now. With what Duyodere is saying, look, don't export
Yes, there was supposed to be a rally for Wike. And one would ask, is Wike trying to gain popularity across the state? Would he go on a tour across the 30 states of Nigeria?
If Wike doesn't take time, he is going to pull down the South. The little political capital that South has. They are going to lose it. And who will be the beneficiary? The Southwest or the North? It's as simple as that. And it is happening before our eyes. Very soon now, okay, Edwin Clark is gone. How many elders of South are in support of Wike? And why is the president nudging him? Like you said, in the speech that declared the state of emergency, the president practically blamed everything on Fubara.
You know, where he also said that he did not call the militants to order. You know, that statement also credited to Governor Fubara of who will tell them when to move. Would you actually say that was taken out of context? Or could he
Tell who when to move. Tell who when to move. These are questions we should answer. And the president is being anticipatory of a likelihood of breakdown of law and order in Rivers State. He declared a state of emergency. Okay, let him declare a state of emergency in Edo State, where 16 hunters were killed. Let him go to Plateau State and declare a state of emergency, where ethnic communities have been cleaned out. In Benue State, the same thing. In Taraba and parts of Adamawa, Middle Belt, let him declare a state of emergency in all of those places and take out the governors and the legislature, so that we know that Nigeria is in a war situation, because that is what it has become. Exactly the point, so all these things, the River State thing, both the president, the Wike, and in fact Fubara and the elders of River State are not handling this problem the way they should appropriately handle it.
There are certain schools of thought that believe that the whole situation of River State has indeed saved Governor Fubara from impeachment. Or would you say it's made matters worse for Nigeria's democracy? One line, because of our time, so that we can go to the next topic.
Okay, talking about 7 Fubara
from impeachment, yes.
From impeachment. One good day, he will come back. And when he comes back, the 27 lawmakers will also come back
again.
So,
all right, we're talking about insecurity in the country and the menace of some terrorists who masquerade as headers. Although we do know that some headers go about with weapons, and they'll say it's because they are trying to ward off thieves or criminals who might try to steal their cows from them. One thing is that these headers now they move into residential areas where there are no grasses, and you will just see cow dung littered across the streets. People will be driving and they will just drive over it, they'll move into their compound, and the whole street just ends up smelling. But that's not where I'm going. The Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association of Nigeria in Benue State is crying out that farmers are poisoning their crops that they are giving to the herders to feed their cows. Or when the herders move into certain places for their cows to feed, those cows end up dying because the fields have been poisoned. Going by what happened in Edo State last week, and this is not the first time we're also hearing about this. It's almost as if, one person did it and other people now learn, say, okay, you want to eat my crops, you want to make me lose, then I'll poison the crops so that you can also lose as well. Would you say that Nigerians are these people who are affected? Because this is in Agatu, and you know how many times Agatu has seen the menace of herdsmen attack. Would you say that these people are fighting back the Fulani herdsmen because they believe that the government will not do it for them?
Well, like I always say, my mentor, Professor Ihechukwu Madubike, says that an eye for an eye leaves the world a blind space, a blind spot. I wouldn't say that it is good to poison crops.
Their own crops, because any other person could, go in there and maybe plug an ear of corn.
While it is not good to poison crops so that cows will eat and die, it is also not good for cows to go and eat unpoisoned crops. So where does that leave us? Where it leaves us is that the federal government should do the needful and stop cows from moving into people's farms. There is action and reaction, which are equal, but opposite. Now, these people are coming from this direction. These people are coming from this other direction. So what do? The federal government should do the needful. I understand that it's only in Nigeria and some few other countries that you see cows roaming the streets, that you see cows roaming the farms.
Even in the FCT.
Assuming that somebody borrowed ₦1 million to put into cassava farm, and when he's done, before he harvests it, in fact, as the cassava plants are just growing up, a herd of cows get into the farm and destroys it. When he goes back to the community bank, when it is time for repayment of his loan, is he going to tell them that cows came and destroyed his farm? Of course, the bank will not listen to him. The bank is not going to listen. So what happens? It is the responsibility of the federal government to ensure that cows should get into ranching.
But why do
But
you
I
think
also
there
have
is
the
the
right to
argument?
protect my
Why do
farm
you
as
think
a
there is
farmer.
the argument against ranching? Would you say it's illiteracy, or they just want to
No,
preserve
no,
their
that is to
culture
tell you- no,
of
that is to tell
that
you.
nomadic
It
lifestyle?
is not about nomadic lifestyle. It is just to tell you that it is not actually ranching. It is not cow that is the problem. It is the land. They are after people's land, people's ancestral land. That is just it. It is not about ranching. If you go to Brazil,
So
it is
herding
ranching.
is an excuse to go and live in those places and take over.
Not to live in those, to take over. Yes, that's the appropriate word, to take over people's ancestral homes.
I don't know if you've seen videos of where a particular Fulani herdsman who appeared to be well-read was talking about how before they settle in any community, they've paid the leaders of that community that they don't just walk in without talking to anyone.
No, it's not all the time. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't. I told a story, maybe not here, of my own community, my village per se, my cousin's house. They went, broke his gate, entered. It was a tank. They were constructing a this tank, overhead tank. But before they did, they had to erect walls with block and mounted the tank. When they got there, they opened the tap and allowed their cows to feed. When my cousin came and asked them, we said, that their government told them that they own, that we are conquered people, that they own all of these places.
So that born-to-rule mentality is the
Mentality
reason why
that-
they can have the mind to just roam
the whole
about.
place, that the whole of this south belongs to them, that they conquered us, that we are conquered people. So they have that mentality. And that is what their people told them.
And
So
it
it
seems
is not
like their
just about-
government
it
don't
is
want
not-
to disabuse them of that
They
notion.
don't want, and that is why they even want to create grazing routes, which people are rejecting. So it's not about heading cows. It's about land grabbing. That is essentially. I've just told you here that in parts of Benue and Plateau State, communities have been sacked through ethnic cleansing, and their communities renamed, and nothing has happened up until this moment that I speak with you. So what does that tell you?
Which is why I'm asking the question: do you believe that these people are seeing it as, oh, we're just fighting back? If you're going to eat my crops, your cattle might as well die. And also, all these people who were called hunters, the 16
Okay,
hunters
what-
who were
yes.
murdered last
Okay.
week in Edo State.
Unfortunately.
A lot of people have also come out to say that why would you leave the north to come and hunt in the south? Where are the forests that you want to hunt in the south?
You see, these are the questions. These are the questions that we should ask, and government should also provide answers to us. Why I will not sit here and say poison your crops so that cows will die. I will also not allow cow owners to get into people's farms because they are disrupting their livelihood. And if they choose to protect their own crops and destroy your own livelihood, where does that leave us? An eye for an eye leaves the world a blind space. And we don't want to have a blind world. So the government that is in charge of security of lives and property should step in and do the needful.
All right, 1 minute before you go, because our time is fast spent. SDP's Adebayo is saying he's willing to step down for a better candidate. This was after he has said, oh, I'm definitely contesting in 2027. The fact that someone new just joined the party does not mean we'll leave the ticket of the party to them. Has he been convinced otherwise?
He has the right to change his mind. It's his mind. Maybe he has changed his mind.
Now that El-Rufai entered the party is when he changed his mind?
No, but he made the statement after El-Rufai. He made the previous statement that he's still in the beat after El-Rufai had
Just
entered.
a few days after El-Rufai joined the party.
Just a few days after El-Rufai. And I spoke with him too. He said, look, I'm still in the race.
Thank you so much, Mr. Okoro.
Thank you, Chairman.
I know we had an agreement, and I'm trying to stick to it.
Okay, if you want to take more questions, you can. No problem.
All right, thank you so much. Now I want to talk about Obasa and the Lagos issue. Obasa has refused to withdraw his suit, and sources are saying they don't understand what's happening. Every other person involved in the situation has literally held up their own end of the bargain, but only Obasa has refused to withdraw the suit, even though Miranda is no longer the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly. Why do you think he's been so resolute in his resolve?
Is he being resolute or is he being smart? I mean, he's a good learner. He's a good learner. He's a student of politics.
Wait, if he withdraws it so that they don't go ahead and impeach him again or force him to step down or what?
No, what he's trying to do, Fubara went to the president and, they gave him a clauses of a peace deal and he fulfilled it. Part of the fulfillment was to withdraw his bill, his suit in the court, and which he did. The other party didn't withdraw their own. And at the end of the day, what happened? You see what happened to Fubara. You saw what happened to him. It was that particular suit that he withdrew from the court that the Supreme Court had to entertain even a matter that was not before the Supreme Court. A matter that was subsisting at the Federal High Court. The Supreme Court had, on its own omnipotence, had to wade into the matter and deliver a judgment on a case that was not before it.
Saying where's the evidence of the
evidence of the defection. Meanwhile, a case that is still pending and to speak before a Federal High Court.
So Obasa is learning from Fubara's mistake.
So Obasa is learning from Fubara's mistake. Now, what Obasa wants to do is go to court, and the court will say, look, your impeachment was illegal. When he has that document in his hand, he'll say, Baba, okay, I've listened to you. Now we can make peace. I think that is what he's trying to do. He's simply trying to play smart, and I don't blame him. It's not as if he's now disobedient to, but he's playing smart. He wants to protect himself from what might eventually happen if he withdraws the suit. If he withdraws that suit, who tells you that the issue of his impeachment, legality or illegality of it, will not come up?
So he might be foreseeing a situation where he will be strong-armed to actually step down as Speaker of the Lagos State House.
Maybe I'm twisted.
All right, let's go back to talking about security. IPOB has told the people of the Southeast to prepare for self-defense following the killing of some northern hunters in the Uromi area of Edo State. IPOB warned the outside community to stay clear of ethnic tensions that could be detrimental to them. Iman Powerful, who is a spokesman for IPOB, alleged that some Arewa groups are inciting violent assaults on Igbos and Christians in the north due to the killings in Edo State. Yeah, I was listening to the Political Spotlight with Esther Nwachukwu yesterday, and she mentioned this, and I actually saw certain Arewa, certain northern influencers posting, "Oh, we are not happy about this. We won't let this go just like that. We cannot allow the killing of our brothers to just happen. These people need to know that we cannot take this." There are a lot of people, a lot of northern elite, actors, footballers. Just there was this general outrage, which one can say is very, very correct. But the question is, where was this outrage for all of these headsmen killings that we've been reading out for weeks? You know what's been happening in Ehamufu? You know what happened in Amegon Kaleha in Ebonyi State? They killed one cow. The herders went on rampage into the village and killed a lot of people on Sunday morning while people were going to church. So why does it seem like there's selective outrage when it happens to some people rather than when it happens to others? One could say arguably Southerners, when it's Southerners, or everybody just looks away, just talks about it and glosses over it for a moment. But when it happens to Northerners, all of people are just talking. Does it mean that it is correct? And now IPOB is saying prepare for self-defense?
It's not correct. And what IPOB is saying, before I get into what IPOB is saying, what is happening speaks to the clear arrogance of the North, which they fly in our faces every time. The arrogance of the North, which they fly in our faces. And the product is the supreme price of silence that the South is paying for all of this. The heavy price of silence that the North is paying. You can imagine that for over 8 years of the Buhari administration, heads of Southerners, heads of Middle Belters were put on more like in the abattoir.
From Plateau to Kaduna to
Benue to Enugu State to Ebonyi State to Abia State, Anambra State, Delta State. All parts of the South.
And even certain parts of the North as well.
South into an abattoir. And nobody ever complained. Nobody's career was damaged. No security chief was removed. No intelligence chief was removed. And all of a sudden, 16 people are killed. Unfortunately, condemnable, by all well-meaning Nigerians. And this is the reaction we are getting. On the floor of the Senate, a senator stands up and tells Nigerians that it should be, and the chief of defense staff sends out his squad to go after the killers of these 16 people, which is the right thing to do. But where was the CDS all this while? Where people were being
killed? The fear is even that innocent people should not be incriminated.
Both Muslims and Christians. Let's even take ethnicity. Let's take religion. Let's take tribalism out of it. Security agencies, Nigerian soldiers have been killed in the line of duty by terrorists, by bandits, by kidnappers.
And even videos of their execution
posted. Get is press statements from the military high command, from the Senate, from House of Representatives. But this case now is like, look, oh heavens, it's going to fall because 16 people were killed. And I keep saying unfortunately, because for every unpunished murder, it takes away something from the security of a living being. I like the fact that they are going after these people that killed the 16 purported hunters. But they should also go back enemies. But the silence of our own brothers. But the silence of our own brothers. That is what is going to count. And it is counting now.
But then we should not just be asking for condemnation, but for actions that can actually forestall such incidents.
So that is why IPOB has come out to say, guard the alliance, because time for action is now.
I want to remind you of Ezendigbo, who said we will bring IPOB to protect us after the 2023 elections. After what happened with a lot of people being saying that they were intimidated at the polling unit because they didn't look like they would be voting for a certain political party, right? So IPOB saying, let's get ready for self-defense. Wouldn't it be a reign of anarchy and chaos if everyone says, okay, let's get ready for self-defense from Edo to Ebonyi to Enugu, anywhere you see these Fulani headsmen, without asking questions, you do something to them?
Statements that are coming out from the north about this
I'm the one that is telling you about the statement from so many northern influencers and others saying after Ramadan. In fact, some of them are saying, the worst part is that it now giving it this tribal coloration, with some people saying it was the Igbos in Edo State that killed our brothers. So every Igbo person in the north start going back home.
So you can now see the reaction of IPOB, because the IPOB elements, the IPOB people know that the moment it happens, people from the north, they don't distinguish between the Igbo, the Uromi, the Edo, the Ibibio, the Efik, the Anang, the Ebira. What they know is that everybody down south in Niger is Igbo. So when this kind of thing that happen in Edo State, in Uromi part of which is Ishan, the next thing is they'll start killing people in Kano. They start killing Igbo people in Kaduna. They start killing Igbo people in parts of the north. So that is why IPOB is saying. Now, it is left for the government. Like some northern governors have come out to say, look, no, hold it. We won't allow this happen, because they know the consequences.
We really hope they will not allow that, because when you really look at it from several different angles, you ask yourself the question, if we allow everybody to carry arms, what will happen to the security that is already hanging by a thin
thread? If you don't want everybody to carry arms, then you have to disarm the people that are armed illegally.
We cannot be going back to 1967, Mr. Okoro, because from 1967 till now, how many years has it been? Nigeria has not moved from that mentality of burn them, kill them, infidels, tell them, do this to that, to them. All of this and that. It's quite unfortunate. Don't you think that northern governors should be going on a literacy campaign?
Exactly my point. Now, the point is this. You are talking about if we all get armed. All of us should not be armed. Unfortunately, why all of us shouldn't be armed? Some people are already armed and doing havoc with their arm. So what do you call that? What should the government do? Is not to disarm them, so that further people will not further arm themselves. Look at the other day. What was discovered was in which part of the port? Is it in, I think in Lagos here, that we discovered a container of arms loaded with AK-47, assault rifles, and all of that. What were they going to?
And that's the one that was intercepted.
Intercepted. What about the ones that are not intercepted?
That have passed by without anyone knowing.
And some of them, light arms and ammunition that filter from the Sahel, all the way from Chad, Libya, Mali, Niger,
to these terrorists in the bush who go into people's abodes to kill them.
People that are sponsored with foreign aid from the Middle East, parts of the world, and what you said is doing, sponsoring, according to Scott Perry, and all of that. So you discover that the government has their work cut out for them in terms of security. Because the moment we look, the other day I was holding a discussion on the morning show, and we had this argument. Nigeria is a failed state. Nigeria is a failing state. And I was like, well, technically speaking, Nigeria is not a failed state, because technically Nigeria is not a failed state until such a time that the state loses the monopoly, of the control of legitimate violence. Now that the government still has that monopoly, but there are pockets of resistance here and there by non-state actors, you cannot say that Nigeria is a failed state. But in terms of fragile states index, FSI, which is even used to measure the fragility index of a state that lends it to becoming a failed state. If you look at the states that have failed, if you look at Somalia, if you look at Yemen, if you look at Afghanistan, all these states were either number 1, 2, 3, 4 before they unraveled and became failed states. Clearly, states that are internal warfare. So we shouldn't let Nigeria get to that level, where our fragility is now very red alert. Very red alert. What it tells you is that Nigeria can just unravel any moment if the government doesn't take care, if the government doesn't do its job well. And it's a clarion call on not just the president, members of the National Assembly, whatever they are doing there, whether they are holding a tea party or whatever, they should ensure that, because if this country, the road to Kigali, the road to Rwanda, we are clearly passing through that road, and we shouldn't let it happen. Look at what is happening in DRC. In Congo, it will be a child's play if you compare the active youth population in Nigeria.
Which is quite unfortunate, because when you look at the fact that we have IDP camps right here in Nigeria, that they don't even get enough aid. Which country is going to take Nigeria if such a thing happens? With over 200 million citizens.
Nigeria, at a point, about 2 months ago, Nigeria said they wanted to bring back over 100,000 refugees, Nigerian refugees, outside Nigeria. Refugees, which means they are outside Nigeria, not even internally displaced people. Some of them in Niger, some of them in parts of Cameroon and even Sudan, to bring them back to Nigeria. So you can just imagine if this country unravels.
We will continue to call on the federal government to take the job of security seriously, as we cannot afford the breakdown of law, a national breakdown of law and order in the country. Mr. Okoro, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you immensely. Do have an amazing day. You have been listening to the World News at 12 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. Just before we wrap up, let's take a look at the top stories again. You heard that Edison Ehie has revealed he was offered 5 billion naira to impeach Governor Fubara. SDP's Adebayo expresses willingness to step down for a better candidate. Obasa stands firm on lawsuit against Miranda and Lagos lawmakers despite Tinubu's mediation. And Trump insists on a third term as US president. That is a wrap on the World News at 12. My name is Chioma Innocent. Good afternoon and thank you for listening.